Well, top of the morning to you, everybody out there in Chester County, Coatesville, and on my Facebook page. Doggone it, it is Saturday at high noon, ladies and gentlemen, and I have in our audience, one of our special guests is Deacon Levi Tucker the second. That means there was a couple more before him. Now we're going to see just why he's the second, ladies and gentlemen. He's coming on live today, and in honor of our MLK Fest weekend, we have Deacon Levi, and he's going to be giving an overview as he will be portraying Jimmie Lee Jackson on our MLK Fest, man. And I want to know a little bit about Jimmie Lee Jackson, and I'm sure he can tell us. Now, but first, before we get into that, I just want to do a little public service announcement. Don't forget, this is MLK Weekend Fest weekend. Even right now, as we speak, there are some things going on down at the CYWA. We have a panel with some gentlemen from Cheney College, Lincoln College, from Coastal Area School District. It's going to be stuff going on all weekend. But we're going to concentrate really, really, really on that reenactment march on Monday, a reenactment march of that march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge where people's getting bumped upside the head and bit by dogs and all that in a quest of voting rights, man. So this is an important weekend. Let me see let's see if we can't get some of our viewers to tune in now. I'm going to call you Levi, okay, D?
That is perfectly fine.
Now, this is a maiden voyage. I'm never on at noon on a Saturday. Never. So you must be special. And so my viewers, if they don't catch it on this one, they will definitely catch it on the replay. Sister Linda Tynes, who is portraying Annie Lee Cooper, she is with me. She hasn't given up on me. And she said, "Hey, Brother Fonzan, you're a guest." Now, Levi, where are you from originally?
So I'm from Darby Township, Pennsylvania. It's a little town right now. Well, let's say it's split. It's on McDade Boulevard, which is could run through let's say Ridley, Swarthmore, PA, to Ridley, into Folsom, into Glen Olden. So the side I grew up on is on the side that is technically the Glen Olden postal code side. Then there's the other side, that's Sharon Hill postal code, but it's all Darby Township. And we have a pretty rich history. We used to have our own high school. Then they merged everything like they did, everywhere all around the country during those times. So my dad graduated from Darby Township High School in 1981. And then it became Academy Park High School, which we played against Coatesville and different things, football, basketball. Y'all are a much larger area than our area was or is. And so that kind of showed in some of the competitions we would have with y'all over time. But we've done pretty well for ourselves, though. I'm proud to be from what we call township.
Yeah, there was a real deep hood side too up there in Upper Darby. I'm from South Philly. Used to hang over in Southwest Philly, so I'm right next door to you. Yeah. Darby used to be special, man. It'd make a brother nervous up in there, huh? But that's good, man. Hey, look, to my viewers out here, man, it's going to be a real exciting weekend, man. Hey, don't forget MCDC. That's the nonprofit that I created back in 2017. We are having our book. I always call it book. Designer Bag Bingo fundraiser, and where we provide assistance for our students that's graduating from high school, that's going into college or trade schools. And look, right now, them trade schools look like a better bargain now. I'm going to tell y'all the truth. Them trade schools, you're making plenty of money and you ain't got that long financial tail behind you. Man, them student loans is killing people. It's like, So just think about it, but we're here for you and everything. Hey, Sister Linda, we're going to find out just who this Jimmie Lee Jackson person is. Can you open us up and just tell us a little bit about this gentleman that you will be portraying?
Yes. So Jimmie Lee Jackson was born in Marion, Alabama. and he was the youngest deacon at his church, right? So I relate to that because I am the youngest deacon on roll at my church. I am the youngest deacon to be ordained as a deacon
What
at my
church you
church.
go to?
I go to Careview Community Church, where Pastor Paul James is the senior pastor.
Oh, wait. Yeah, this is how I talk now. He that boy, man. Seriously.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been with him since I was 2 years old.
And then he started singing. He made me want to pick cotton, though. I'm gonna tell you, because he got that real rich, deep voice, right?
Oh yeah.
He started singing. I'd be like, "Oh Lord, please stop! You're killing me." Beautiful voice, man. Hey, yeah, that's a great church, man. Come on, keep going. Sorry for interrupting, but this is how I do what I do. Come on, talk to me.
Yeah, so like I said, Marion, Alabama is where he was born. And he was young when he first intersected with this idea of being an activist and being a part of a movement. He saw his grandfather be rejected for voting. Himself was also rejected for voting and things of that nature. So that really sparked a fire in him to one, he wrote a letter. And that is huge as far as like for a young person to be that involved to write a letter to say, like, listen, this is totally ridiculous. We need to have the right to vote because we have needs. We have some rights that need to be instilled. And if we can't vote, we can't put people in place that represent us, then we can't have those rights. So that is something that he was very passionate about. And he was very active, very inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King as a young man. And again, this is the man who was active. I said he was the youngest deacon in his church. So obviously, when you get asked or invited to be a deacon, that means you have already been serving. And that's just from experience and knowing that I was asked to be a deacon because of the things that I was committed to prior to even being and even thinking about being a deacon. I actually was never considering being a deacon. I was asked by my pastor after a season of time where I just had served so well. So just to put it in perspective, he was a very active person in his church, his community, and with his family. He did so much in this movement prior to even being a martyr that I really like to, when I started to do the research on him, I really started to see like, oh, there's more about his life and how he lived that made his martyrdom even more significant. So that's just a little backdrop of who Jimmie Lee Jackson was and who he is to us. I think these are stories that are untold. We know about Dr. Martin Luther King as we should. We know about guys like Malcolm X as we should. But some of the lesser known people like a Jimmie Lee Jackson, it's good to hear these stories because it shows everybody that you don't have to be the person who's giving a speech on in Washington, right? You don't have to be that person to be an effective activist.
Come on, Deke, you bringing that thing home. Hey, Minister Bowman has checked in. Craigie, it is good to see you, man. Thank you for tuning in. And man, you know this, you're kind of like scratching me where I itch in regards to you don't have to be out front like that to have an impact and things. And I was telling Minister Marshall about that maybe this year we will focus a little bit more on those lesser known activists, man, because evidently they were the catalyst for the more well-known to be up there. And we all know we need a foundation. It's always, I mean, I used to own a store and people would look at what I had displayed on the front because I had a sneaker store, and you would look on the wall and you would see all these sneakers. It'd be one shoe on the wall, and everybody would look at it and say, "Oh man, that's beautiful." But they didn't realize that all the work was done in the back room. Right. It was the back room that made it either a success or a failure, man. So I'm loving that, man. Jimmie Lee Jackson. And now let me ask you, what were some of the influences you say shaped his commitment to civil rights?
I think it was his family being denied to vote several times, but not just denied. It was the lack of decency. It was the just the dignity that was not present when it came to even denying. One of the things I did in my research extensively as far as looking up and reading, but I also watched Selma. Now I know there's a lot of creative liberty that takes place in these type of biopics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you have to do so. Like some of the stuff that was in the biopic when I did my reading, there were some things that were a little off, but that happens. It's Hollywood; they have to make it look a certain way. And sometimes history is not it's not pretty. It's not like good for the screen just to translate it over. So, but in watching that, you get a depiction of how they didn't just tell them, no, you can't vote, or no, we're denying you to vote. It was like they were beating them. They were speaking very just profanely and horribly towards them. And it goes so deep. It's not even just about the things said or done. It's that feeling of, oh, you all don't consider us to be a part of this here thing called America, right? But we're here and we built this nation. We built it for free. And now you all are not trying to give us, after they so-called the 13th Amendment so-called gave us freedom, you all are now not allowing us to really live in that freedom in a way that is impactful positively for our community. And so, like I said, the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, the political abuse, anything you could think of that was happening, these are the things that really inspired him because, of course, there were different parts of the movement. You had your Malcolm X, who was more militant and like, yo, eye for an eye. Like, I ain't letting them beat me over the head. You had, of course, the Black Panther Party, who was more civic-minded about the communities that we come from and free food programs and things of that nature. But they were also eye for an eye. They said, we ain't letting nobody hit us over the head either. The unique nature of Martin Luther King's part of the movement, and I say that, I know there were many other prominent figures, but just to kind of keep it around the topic of Martin Luther King, the unique part of it, and Bayard Rustin is the one who influenced him in this direction, because Martin Luther King, people don't know, wasn't really down with the nonviolence for too long. Bayard Rustin had to convince him that this is the better path to take because there's already those other movements. And what happens is it turns into this thing. It's a glaring difference. If they're beating us while we're not carrying guns, while we're not responding, then it looks crazy. And eventually the federal government has to respond. Even if the state and the local don't care and they want to keep it going and they're okay with the culture as is, the federal government has to respond and has to move on our behalf, because it just does not look good optically if they're beating us over the head, but we're not fighting back. We're not carrying any kind of weapons or anything like that. So I think what inspired him was that we're going to move in a way that's nonviolent. He was very inspired by Martin Luther King and the way that he spoke and the way that he led. Martin Luther King, very strong man. Even though he was nonviolent, I think there's a misconception sometimes in a more radical mind of some of our people that because he was nonviolent, that he wasn't a strong man, that he was just like walking around and letting people do whatever they wanted to do. So Jimmie Lee was very inspired by that, because at the end of the day, and there's times now where we don't feel like being, and violence is not secluded to physical violence, right? So there's times where we're getting mistreated, where we know we're getting the short end of the deal here, and we want to respond aggressively. We want to respond in a certain way, but to have the discipline to say, you know what? No, I'm not going to respond fire with fire. I want to respond with a calm and an opposite spirit, and I want to get things done. So I would say that was his inspiration, to see a man lead that way, influence such a great amount of people, whether they were white or black. Because we talk about this march, there were all types of people who are a part of this march. And I'm sure even on Monday when we do our reenactment, they're going to be all different types of people from different cultures and backgrounds. So I think to see a man be able to unify people across the board, whether you are white, black, whether what ethnicity you belong to, group you belong to, is something that I think is really what stuck out. But also the experience is the other part of that, is having the firsthand experience of feeling a lack of dignity and respect and decency when you just want to do a basic thing like vote. Voting is a basic right of a citizen of this nation. And we've seen in recent times where they've tried to create obstacles with that. So yeah, those two I think those two were the main inspirations. The firsthand experience of watching his 80-year-old grandfather go for to vote and be rejected, but also be rejected in such a disrespectful way. And then also watching Dr. Martin Luther King And there were other groups that, you know, came in that were around. There was one that was operating in the area, Selma, already, called SNCC. They called it SNCC, SNCC. And they were operating. That's where our dear brother, I'm trying to blank on his name, but I'll remember it. John, I think his name was. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I won't stick to it. I remember. Yes. So that's where he came out of. He was a young kid coming out of that. So there's so much that inspired him, but I'm just thinking the lived experience is what kept him aware of the fact that, oh, we don't have full rights as citizens of this nation, and we need to get it. And he was very inspired. I want my family to vote. I want my grandfather to have an opportunity to vote because of all he's been through. If his grandfather was 80 at that point, that means you go back, then he was likely being raised by at least sharecroppers, right? At 80 and 65, and then 100 years before that, they just, you know, freed slaves. So he was at least being raised by sharecroppers and probably raised by people who were enslaved. So, you know, it's talking about his grandfather. So one generation away, and, you know, his great-grandparents, Jimmie Lee's great-grandparents, were enslaved. So there's this inspiration for progress, I believe, that was just innately there.
You gotta excuse me for a second. I got this coughing fit, but I wonder where he got his inspiration from, because to bring all these people together, he must have been charismatic, energetic, passionate about what he wanted, because this is kind of like what draws people. Is there anybody that he emulated or who he got kind of like his motivation or mentorship from?
Well, so from my research, so Jimmie was a part of the movements, and he would, like I said, at one point he actually wrote a letter in regard to having the right to vote. I don't believe he was ever a leader or was the one gathering anybody, but he was a part of the group. He made sure he was active. Like I mentioned before, he wasn't one of the prominent figures of the movement, but he was a figure of the movement, and became prominent in his death. And so while he lived, he actively was a part of marches. They had several marches, and the reason why, and I know we're going to get to this when we get into kind of the night of the attack, the reason why the things went the way they went is because they decided to switch things up, and they were having some, you know, smaller night marches, so there were less people than there typically was. Instead of 1,000 or more, there might have been like 200, 300 people. So he was a part of it. He wasn't a person who I believe that, from my research, I didn't see anything that showed that he actually organized marches or anything like that. But he was definitely one who was willing and able. And him and his family were a part of pretty much everything that went on during that time.
And sometimes the best ability is availability. So that's all good. Hey, so come on, let's talk about his death, man, about the events that led up to his death.
Okay. So they decide to have some night marches with lesser people. I believe there was about 200 people on this particular march this evening. And they were marching, and they get to a certain point, and they turned all the street lights out. So it's pitch black, can't see anything. It said that the minister that was with them dropped to his knees and began to pray, and was hit over the head by state troopers and local police. And that started the chaos. So then they started chasing, and basically it was just an attack. It was an attack. They began to attack everybody who was a part of this march. Now, Jimmie Lee and his family, they ran to a diner called Max. And in this restaurant, there were other people who were a part of that situation also there, and trying to blend in, trying to make it look like they weren't a part of anything. Well, right when they were trying to, I guess, exit, they thought it was all clear. There were troopers that got to that diner, and they began to beat everybody who was there. And of course, Jimmie Lee, his grandfather, and his mother were there. So they go to attack his mother. He goes to interfere with it. Then they turn their sights on him. and one of the troopers is trying to, I guess, either he's just attacking him, and we're trying to restrain him or something like that. And eventually, the second trooper that's there pulls the gun and shoots him in the stomach. Now, this is where I say Hollywood is different than reality. So in the movie, he dies right away because they can't drag it, I guess. But in reality, he doesn't die until 8 days later because he's able to leave. He's able to get out. They still beat him while he's shot, and he's able to eventually get to the hospital. MLK is able to visit him because I don't believe MLK wasn't a part of this march. This was kind of like an offshoot of the bigger group. So he's able to visit him, spend some time with him, and then 8 days later he passes away. And so I say all that to say that's a strong person to be shot in the stomach, walk a few, still being beat, and then we end up he ends up dying eight days later. That's pretty much the events that happened of that night, right? Like I said, the chaos goes out. The police officers and the troopers are beating those who are part of this particular march. They catch him in a restaurant, and then he ends up shot by one of the troopers. So that's the events of that night.
So how did his death influence the movement?
It was a clear. So one of the things that the nonviolent movement was intentionally doing was showing the contrast between what the people who are asking for the rights, or even in some cases demanding their rights, how they're acting versus the people who are denying them and how they're acting. So this is the most egregious thing. Like, you're already beating us over the head. You're already spitting on us. You're already doing all these nasty, horrible, violent things towards us. But the worst thing you could do is take somebody's life. And especially if the person that took the life, as in the trooper, has the upper hand in having the weapon in their hand. And the person whose life is taken doesn't have any weapons and is only, trying to defend, from the story that's being told, was trying to defend his mother from being attacked. It becomes such a glaring thing. Now, I feel weird calling him a martyr, which he is, because I think the problem is, why do we have to get to that point? Like, why does somebody have to die for the federal government to say, you know what, this is getting too out of hand. We need to give these people their rights, so that, and basically we need to give these people their rights so they can stop protesting, so we can stop seeing innocent Black people being killed. It wasn't even that we believe that they should have the right to vote. It was just that this doesn't look good on us as a nation if this is happening. So it's really a coercion, and it's not really a thing. So it's like, why do we have to? And we're still kind of in that same space. That's the thing I've been thinking about, is like George Floyd 2020. Yeah. We're still in that space. Now, mind you, somebody might say to me, and there's people who even look like me and you that will argue me and say, well, George Floyd wasn't no activist. He wasn't like, whatever. That's neither here nor there. The point is, why do we have to get to that extreme for things to start moving in a certain direction? Like, why does somebody have to lose their life? Why can't just the way that we're living be the reason why we have the right? So that's just something that made me think about that. And we're saying that this sparked the actual march that we're reenacting, is that this death was a part of that inspiration. It's like, why are we still dealing with the same thing? Like, today, to get things done, somebody might have to be like die. And that's crazy. It's like, until somebody dies, it's like, oh, nobody's going to move on our behalf because it doesn't look bad enough. But once somebody dies, it's like, oh, this looks really bad. We need to do something. So I would say that's what really sparked it, and that's what inspired the rest of the people who were part of the movement to do something on a larger scale. It was like, that's crazy that there was a march. There was no acts of aggression from the group of people protesting towards the officers, and the fact that it turned into a violent situation, and it's not even that it turned into it. It's likely that they planned it that way, because why did the lights go out? So you know what I mean? Did they go out, or were they turned off? Like, That's the whole thing. And so my whole thing is that's the sad part about it, that we didn't get change, or we didn't get a move an act of activism that came out of just the way we were living and the way we did things. Somebody had to die. And that's why it's important to tell these stories, because we have to remember now that even though we've made some progress, there's still a lot of work to do. And we can't get so comfortable that we forget the people who got us here, and that we just get like, oh, everything's good. We live in America. You know, people say we live in the best nation in the world, and it's like there's still a lot of work for us to do, especially for Black and brown folk. So that's my thinking. But yeah, that sparked it. You know, you took this man's life for what? What did you take his life for? There was no need for that. It's because you knew you could do that, and they did, because he didn't get any kind of consequence until 2005 or something like that. Like where he was back in the court. And then finally he admitted, I think he just like flat out said it. And then they finally, but it wasn't anything. I think they charged him or convicted him of like manslaughter. So you talking 1965, no real consequence until after the millennium. Like he lived the whole life. That trooper lived the whole life. Probably finished his career off, had great benefits package, all that good stuff. No accountability until then. Wow. And by then he's old, and I'm sure they didn't. I got to look it up. I think they did. You know, I watched a video of somebody almost like a home video, like anybody could put up on YouTube, and they were at the tombstone of Jimmie Lee Jackson, and they were talking about it. And the woman was saying, I don't think he's staying, like talking about the trooper, I don't think he's staying in prison the whole time. I think they let him out for the week, and he comes in and stays for the weekend. And that's speculation. I'm not saying that that's something that I found to be true, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, no.
I wouldn't be surprised, because who's gonna be able to say what if they decided that that's what they want to do for? And at that point, he was an elderly man, so they could just justify it by he's an elderly man. What is he gonna do staying in prison the whole time? You know, like just make him do his weekends in prison, and that's it.
Man, look, let me say good afternoon, Sister Roberta. It is good to see you. Brother Tyrone Ricks has checked in, said good afternoon, Brother Fonz, and special guest Levi. I see they're hanging in with me on this noonday hour. Hey, man, this is really, really good, D. I mean, you've done your research. I'm totally impressed. Now, let me ask you something. What kind of legacy or impact do you think he left on the movement? You may have already explained it, but you said so much, I want to make sure I and my viewers didn't gloss over it. So what kind of impact you think? Hey, there was Brenda Baynard is checking in. Hey, Brenda, it's good to see you. What kind of impact do you think he left, or his legacy?
So I think it's this. You have to be willing, and I'm choosing my words very carefully. So you have to be willing to give up your life. Now, it's not about what I'm saying right now. It's not about dying in a physical sense. It's about giving up your life for the cause and for the movement. See, like I mentioned, we got so comfortable and we got so romantically involved with the American dream that we forget that we only, most of us are only getting the crumbs of that American dream. And so those crumbs feel so good because in comparison, they always point us to third world countries to compare. And what I mean by give up your life is whatever you think is your creature comfort, those are things that you have to be willing, or whatever you think a convenience is for you, you have to be willing. Not saying you'll have to, right? It's not always necessary, but if it becomes necessary, are you willing to give up those creature comforts? Are you willing to give up, whatever it means to be an American, if you don't get full access to the rights of an American as a citizen, right? When you get treated as a second-rate citizen and they tell you that that's better than living in whatever third world country they feel like bringing up in the moment, are you willing to call a spade and say, that's not true. We got more fighting to do, and I don't want my children, I got 2 little kids, I don't want my children to still be dealing with the things that I have to deal with. Right. I want them to be in a whole different space. I don't want them to turn on the TV and they see another Black person slain without cause. another unarmed black person slain. I don't want them to that for that to be norm. It became the norm for me. Like I turned on TV and then especially young black men, but then it became our young black women that were facing the same thing. So everybody in the community is and somewhat in the back of your mind, you're concerned about that, especially if you're interacting with law enforcement or those who are part of what we would consider to be the majority community or of our country, the majority as far as white folk. When you're interacting with them, there's a space where in the back of your mind, this can go left. Like this can go left really fast for no reason, just because of the fact of the narrative that is put out there about us, right? And that's pushed about us. So for me, the I would say the inspiration that he sparked for us is to be willing to give up your life. He was so dedicated to this movement, to activism, that he was willing to give up his life before he even died. He gave up time in his life to be a part of this movement, right? He didn't just say, well, that ain't my problem. He had dreams of moving to the North, out of the South. That's one of the things I did find out in one of my research. One of the things I was finding in my research is that he had dreams of moving out of the South because of the way the South was set up and how it was. He was just like, I'm just going to move to the North and get away from all of this. But once he saw what was going on, and also his father passed. So that's the other thing. Maybe his father doesn't pass, he still moves to the North. But because his father passed and he was the oldest, he stepped in as the man and stuck around after he graduated high school. So there's that part of it too. But he was going to just move to the North, start his life there, and be like, well, the North's going to give me a better quality of life. Now, those of us who grew up in the North know that is heavily prevalent up here too. It's just a little bit more sinister or insidious, you can say. It's a little more insidious here. But he decided that, well, that it's better for his family for him to stay. Being a younger man, his grandfather being older, and taking charge as the man of the house of his family, being a patriarch, to a certain extent, having his grandfather still. But I think that inspiration of like giving up, like he gave that up, like literally. So he already gave up something in his life that he felt like was going to make a better life for himself. But he said, I need to stay here for my family. Then it became, and there's work to be done here. So I'm not just here for just my family, but also my community and also my people at large, to get more rights and to have more dignity in this land that's supposed to be the land of milk and honey. We need to, where's it at? You know what I mean? Especially because we really built it. This is built on our backs. We're the foundation of this land. So, that's what it is to be ready to give up your life, not in a physical sense, but in a convenience, in a professionally career. Be willing to stand for something. That's what it is be willing to stand for something, in that you'll have to give up some of those creature comforts for now, in order to have all of the rights that are owed to us, that are an entitlement. I know people hate that word, but human rights is an entitlement to all humans, and that's the short of all of that.
Deacon Levi Tucker II, man, I think you said a mouthful. We're not going to get all of your knowledge because you will be coming back Monday. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
You'll be with those other icons, sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, your presence, and everything else. I want to say I am totally honored, and I'm so grateful that you allowed us to have a few minutes with you so we can listen to what it is you had to share. There's some things that you said that woke my mind up that I never even thought about, especially in regards to where you was talking about the nonviolence part, was to wake up the federal government, to move them to action. I just kind of like never even thought about that or teased it all the way out. So I'm glad you brought that point up. But ladies and gentlemen, we come to that time. I'm going to let him out. I'm going to let myself out. Deke, prayerfully, Lord willing, I'm going to see you Monday. But if I'm not, I'm with you with my heart, my mind, and my spirit, man. But look, thank you so much for everything that you've done. And I want you to have a great day, all right?
All right, you too.
You take care, man. God bless you.
All right, God bless you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it for a Saturday afternoon. Brother Tyrone, Sister Roberta, Linda, Minister Bowman, I got to go because I got to go. Prayerfully Monday, I want y'all to come on out for that MLK Fest. I know it's going to be a little chilly, but wear some warm clothes. Man, if nobody told you that they love you today, man, I definitely love y'all. I appreciate you. I am moving into my office soon. I'm rearranging one of my rooms in my house, become a little bit more professional, a little bit more focused, to acquire some more equipment so I can have a more excellent broadcast and stuff like that. I just feel like I'm in a season where I need to learn to do what I do better, because those of you who are my listeners and viewers deserve that. Hey, look, I want y'all to have a great day. Be careful, be safe out there in the weather, the snow, and all that stuff, man. I really appreciate y'all. And that ain't no lie. So I'm gonna put my little theme song on, and then I'm gonna bow out. Have a great day and talk to you soon.